Hey everyone. I'm going to be joined today again by Casey, and we're going to be talking about something funny that happened and humor in our relationship in general. So I am usually takes a few seconds. I see him. Says it's adding. Well, for those of you who are watching the replay, hashtag replay in the comments. And as you guys pop in, and while we're waiting for Casey's to sync with this one, I'd love to know how humor plays a role in your relationships, romantic or otherwise. I'd love to know any funny anecdotes you'd like to share. We're going to be sharing our own from his recent visit here. We had an incredible time. We we ended up replaying our first date twice because both of us got that for each other for Valentine's Day. But yeah, that's not the funny story. All right, it says, oh no, didn't add him. I'm trying again. Let's see. Ask, send invite. Okay. It says it's adding. There we go. I still don't see your face. There you go. Okay.
Yeah,
Let
again,
me
like
just.
we had last time, your video went dark on my phone screen. That's weird. I think everybody else can probably see you still, though.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
hi.
Hi. Am I?
I'm
I feel
just
like I'm too
knocking
dark
over my
now.
lights and stuff. Whoops. All right. How's this?
Good.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I thought that whole thing was hilarious, and I went into full panic mode at the same time because like I was trying to keep it a secret. I didn't want to like reveal it. I was actually hoping that we were gonna like make it all the way to the hotel before I was like, oh, let's just go inside here and get the room, kind of a situation. And you cleverly thwarted my efforts, which is fine. I'm not certainly not upset about it, but I was definitely like, oh wow, because I scheduled it like 3 weeks before, and I think I told you that I had already made plans for that night, and you're like, okay, well, I'm not sure what to get you, and then we ended up getting the exact same thing for each other in secret, and I was just like, well, I guess we're meant for each other then, aren't we?
Yeah, it was that week, and I was like, I don't know what to get you because we have like I knew you were planning something, and so I didn't know what I was planning around. And so finally I was like, you know what, it doesn't have to be that day. And I just looked at, days that were available, and it just happened to work out. And so I booked it, and I was so excited because I know you've been wanting to do that for a while. And then you like got me the same thing. But
And so then it was like, wait, please tell me it's not for the same day because I don't know if one's refundable or not, and like what the deal is. So that was my panic mode moment. But we
yeah.
laughed about it, and all was fine.
Yeah, well, of course I wasn't going to get it for that day because I knew you were planning something. But that's
Yeah.
not the funny story. We should tell the funny story.
Oh goodness. Okay. So I mean, there were a bunch. We belly laughed. I don't know how many times between your strategically placed clutter, Mrs. Hate Clutter in my house, and yeah. So anyway, we get to this nice restaurant, which I surprised you with, and we sit down. We're starting to go over the menu, and usually we are in a position where we're both open and interested in trying just about anything on the menu. And as we're scrolling through it, I see baby beet salad, and I was like, "Oh, I love beets. I want to try that," knowing that you hate beets and weren't likely to want to try it or enjoy it or whatever. But we ordered, I don't know, 6 different things, and that came out, and I offered you to try it. I was like, you never know, it might be, maybe this is the way you actually like beets.
Hmm.
So you tried it, and then what happened?
So I really don't like beets. And it's one of those foods, and I'd given you a heads up that this is like there are some foods that you're not crazy about, and then there are some foods that like you can't hide your face when you eat it. And beets is one of those for me. And so I was like, you know what? This is like a really nice restaurant. They probably found a way to make the beets, in it'll probably be delicious, and I should just be open-minded and try it. So I did, and I didn't even notice I was making the face until you started laughing because it didn't taste as bad as beets normally taste to me. So to me, I was like, oh, these aren't so bad, but you saw the face immediately. It was just like this like little kid toddler, like, you know, it's just like one of those, and I couldn't help it. And so then you started cracking up, and I started like dying of laughter, and you posted the pictures about it.
Yeah.
But I think the funnier part is what happened later, because we were on the bus, headed home. This must have been the next day. I don't know. It's all blending together. The next day, we're on the bus headed home, and we were talking something about, oh, we should, let's find a way that we can stick to our regimens better when we're together, because we try to go out a lot and it ends up throwing us off. And so I said, well, just give me beats. And all of a sudden you started beatboxing on a public New York City bus. They literally like, and I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on? And I just started like crying up, like, what are you doing? And you're like, you said to give you a beat. And I was like, no, beets, the vegetable. And so then we were both just like dying on this bus in front of everybody, and it was pretty hysterical.
Yeah, I thought the funniest part of that was like, we're having this conversation, and it was funny the way that the whole conversation was going, in general, and then we diverted off a little bit to the whole diet thing and eating better, and then all of a sudden you made the comment about beets, and I swear to God, was like, this is the most random request on a New York subway that I have ever, or a bus that I've ever heard in my life. But you know what? I'm gonna go with it, and I did. And like, imagine me beatboxing. I am not musically inclined. I played the violin for a while, but I was not a drummer. There's no rhythm to that. I mean, it was just like this super white guy on a subway, on a bus. It was awful. I can only imagine. Like, I'm pretty sure that everybody that around there was just like, and then we laughed.
I don't think anybody even noticed. It's New York.
No, I mean, unless they had headphones in, they noticed, because it was bad. I'm sure it was awful. I apologize to all of you on the subway or the bus. See, this is my issue. You call all of it the train. You're going on rides on trains, but there's a difference in my mind between a bus and a subway, but it's all trains for you guys. So it's like, okay.
Just gonna take the train, and well, they connect to each other. So there's usually a train involved at some point. If I'm just taking a bus, I'll usually say I'm taking a bus.
Yeah, but anyway, I mean, just imagine me and her sitting next to each other, and she says, "Give me a beat," and I start beatboxing. I'm like, this is the most random request. I'm like, do I look like I beatbox?
The home of hip hop, like the birthplace of hip hop. Casey starts beatboxing badly.
Yeah. So
it was great.
So I'm like, like, it didn't make sense, but I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna roll with it. We're gonna see what happens, because I don't know what she's gonna do. She's gonna sing now, and it's gonna be this whole thing on this way. And you looked at me like,
yeah, it was gonna be like that scene in Rent. Let's open up a restaurant in Santa Fe, and I'd be swinging around the poles and the buses, and then everyone would join in.
We're gonna create a flash mob on the bus.
Cool or creative, like that.
And neither am I, and that's what makes it so much more funny, because it was just like, what are we like? I started. It was like 4 seconds worth of attempted terrible beatboxing, but then you explained yourself, and I just couldn't control it. I was like, oh my god, that makes so much more sense. Why didn't I hear that instead of the other? I don't know.
We literally laughed until we couldn't breathe. But anyway, why are we talking about this? There was a method to you wanting to talk about this today.
Yeah. I feel like in reflecting on a lot of different things over the last couple of months, I have definitely made connections between my inability to really like get into humor like that, especially with the kids, and it being a significant like drawback towards my relationship with them, because it's like I can still hear my parents telling me I'm being too loud, or I don't know when to quit, or that's too much, or you don't know when to stop, or whatever the phrase of the week was. And I really don't want that for them, because they are super silly and goofy, and they enjoy it, and why would I want to stop my kids from enjoying themselves and laughing, even if it's the most ridiculous 7, 10, and 12-year-old humor that there is? It's all butt and fart and poop jokes with boys, but
Yes.
but I need to create space for that. I need to have them have that level of goofiness and like everything, because I think that sparks creativity and all kinds of other things that I miss from when I was a kid. I just didn't have those things. And I think that between our relationship really opening up the space for us to really genuinely be ourselves, which is not something that I've felt ever before, but it is absolutely life changing. It's one of those things where now it's like I'm assuming it's always been a lifestyle like thing for you to be able to create spaces that harbor peace and tranquility, or at least as much as humanly possible given the surroundings. Sometimes it's harder to get away from unhealthy situations, and oh god, my nose is starting to go crazy, but anyway. um, Sometimes it's harder to get away from those certain situations, but in general, like being around you and the kids being around you has absolutely been just like a complete twist to what I'm used to from close family and friends and everything. There's a lot of cynicism and like even like reflecting through things that I'm struggling to find the words, but like perfectionism within myself. It comes from a place of always noticing what's wrong, what's broken, what's not good enough, and so on. And I don't want my kids growing up in that environment either, because I recognize so many unhealthy traits in my own behavior from that environment. And as I continue to grow through my own process and everything else, it gives me this huge like magnifying glass to be able to look at what my kids experience is and what that's like, and going like, I didn't mean to make one of my kids cry, I wasn't trying to be mean or anything, but here my child is crying over, it's like, this is not okay. So taking a really we have another comment, taking the time to really reflect on what that means and what it's going to take within our part of the family unit to put together an environment that allows for the freedom to express themselves in the ways that are reasonable and appropriate. Like you're not gonna, go running outside naked, or start screaming butt poop and fart jokes in the middle of a restaurant. But at home, like they need to have more space than I've allowed them to have, or been open to them having. And so I really have been diving into myself and trying to help bring out more of that. And I think I very much accomplished that on the last trip, from what it sounds like. You can tell me what your thoughts are on that, but I feel like there was a lot more openness to expressing the silly parts of myself
Sorry.
and relationship and everything else.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because, especially for kids, they love being silly. Eric, what's my nickname for you?
Silly bug.
Could you hear that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've called him Silly Bug since he was a baby because this kid loves being silly.
Yep.
Careful
Her
with the
nickname
wires.
for me is Silly Bug.
Mm-hmm. You're always gonna be my silly bug. Really? There
And the
we
burping
go.
starts.
There we go with the 10-year-old body function humor. Not my favorite.
I mean, excuse me.
Go, 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 go.
What,
Go,
what,
go,
what,
go.
what?
Let's remember the appropriate timing.
So yeah, it's I love that you bring it up because it is such an important way that we can bond with our kids. And whether like I'm not like as silly and stuff. So it's more for me, I think, appreciating and affirming the value of his silliness when it's done appropriately at the appropriate times and places. um but and like that's the thing, like each of us have different personalities, and what's authentic for one parent isn't authentic for everybody, and so like being mindful of like how we can all have different parenting strengths and superpowers. So for me it's not necessarily jumping in and being silly. There are occasions when I'll do that, but Mine is more so being able to like affirm and appreciate and laugh and like reflect back, like, oh, you're being so silly, that's funny, you know? And that's more my style. Whereas you have this whole goofball side that's really been coming out more, which has been really fun because I end up just laughing my ass off, which is really great. And we'll banter back and forth and joke around with each other, and we both have the kind of sense of humor where we'll bust each other's chops a bit. So yeah, that ends up being funny. I enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think that in any, really healthy relationship, you're able to do that. There are multiple sides to everybody, just like everybody has, a different variance of love languages and stuff like that, communication styles, attachment styles, all of it. But it can be really difficult to find the right like combination of people that it really fits well and meshes with. And I think those are the ones that are just really, really great like opportunities to be able to just let everything be and not try to force things, because in relationships it seems like nowadays people aren't able to really adequately focus on what's really important. People rush into relationships too fast. They don't really do a great job of communicating their needs or their expectations or any number of other things, which actually brings me to one of the reels that we did a while back about like the difference in healthy and unhealthy relationship dynamics, was talking about how there's this idea, and it's held by both men and women, that there aren't any healthy men or there aren't any healthy women or good men or good women and everything else, because it's taking one person's individual experience with their partners and taking that and making it a general like average of the population.
Mhm.
And a majority of the comments that we've gotten on that are from people in small towns. So I can see where some of the idea comes from. But let's face it, not only were you very clear when you were talking that there are plenty of good men and plenty of good women in this world, that we can't try to get this idea across that these people don't exist. They absolutely do, but we have to be, one, the person that can appreciate and accept people for who they are without judging them for how they behave differently from us. Now granted, I'm not going to say that hurting people intentionally is a good trait, but there is something to be said for people who do it accidentally because they're just not aware enough of how their actions can be taken by someone else. We've had all kinds of different situations that you and I have seen over the last couple of years that fit right into that, where it's like someone will express a need or a desire in a relationship, and the next thing you know, everybody's jumping in about red flags, and it's like, okay, that's not a red flag for everyone. That's a red flag for you. That's not a element of a personality that you are capable of accepting. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with having preferences, but to put someone down for a trait of their existence, it's like if you were to tell me just turn off my sense of humor,
Yeah,
or
and
to turn off some other part. It's like people can't just do that, and it's not fair to them either.
yeah, and I think that's it. Like people are trying there's all this advice out there about how you have to be to get men, to get women. And for some people that's the goal. They want to get as many men or as many women as possible. And okay, like but I think in these circles that we're talking about, most of the people are looking for